Just to get us started, the wise ones, those research scientists from far away who are nerds and not kings, contrary to what King James would like you to think, these three folks have seen a star, they have studied the stories of ancient peoples, and they are coming for something to experience. And they're bringing gifts to make peace and connections in a world of domination. And they arrive in Jerusalem at the temple and the palace complex, but it turns out there hasn't been a baby shower at the palace. Like, there's not a baby for them to welcome. They go to the palace thinking that this is the sign of a new royal baby, and then it says everyone is afraid. King Herod is afraid, and everybody is afraid with them. And then it says Herod calls together his priests and his own magi, his own wise ones, his own scholars. And they're like, oh yeah, there's this prophecy of a child born in Bethlehem. And they're all still afraid. And then the king pulls the magi aside and says, then Herod secretly calls for the wise men and learned from them the exact time the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage. Now the wise men seem to be on to him, that this is not a safe way for them to share, that he must have had his fingers crossed or something. And when they heard the king, they set out. And there ahead of them went the star until its rising, and it stopped over the place where the child was. Imagine this moment when they have been watching and studying the horizon for a long journey, each step, each movement, each moment clarified by this dark sky and this bright light that points them in the direction that they are seeking, in this work of peace that they are embodying, in this work of bringing gifts. And so it says, upon entering the house, upon seeing this star, they were overwhelmed with joy. They are overcome with joy in their journey. And on entering house, they saw the child and Mary, his mother. P.S. It's not a manger. Those things are biblically inaccurate if someone wants to argue with you. And they knelt down and they paid him homage. This sense of blessing and encouragement and honor that goes to a peasant child in the middle of a nowhere town. And then opening their treasure chests, they offer him gold and frankincense and myrrh. These extravagant gifts are what Mary and Joseph will need as they escape the wrath of King Herod, as they get away from the violence of a king who has such a big ego that he can't handle just any little thing going wrong. These gifts of wealth and abundance will get them to Egypt as refugees. And then the end of the wise one's story is, and having been warned in a dream, having sensed that nudge to move, they go home by a different way. This is a story of light and darkness, and the Bible is full of these images of light and dark and these invitations to be a part of something that is clarifying and draws us into life. We're in a season when that horizon is often more dark than light. We are in a season when the hours of daylight are slim and precious. We are in a season where we light candles. Every faith tradition in the northern hemisphere has this season of candle lighting in one way or another. A season of being at home and cuddling up and being at the hearth. A season when the snow slows us down and you can't just treat winter like summer. You can't rush. You can't get there fast. You just have to be present. And so I want to invite us to think a little bit about this clarifying season, about its stark beauty, about the light that calls us, and how these dim, dark evenings invite something new in us, just like those wise ones so long ago. Now, the Danish have a practice of preparing for winter. Apparently, it starts in July, and it likely is because they had to. Like, you have to get all of your fuel and all of your food because there was a time when winter was life and death for more people than not. And so even today, this practice is called hygge, which if you want to look at the book title, you, like I, might be thinking it's Haggy or Haggy or Hugag. I don't know. Hygge, that's what the audiobooks say. I've listened to make sure. If anybody here is from Denmark, please come and I'll let you say it yourself. This work of hygge is about approaching winter not by wishing it were summer. Approaching winter and not wishing that you lived in a Mediterranean beach hotel for those months. It is about approaching winter with intention and care for your well-being and for the community's well-being. And so they prepare their food and they prepare their fuel and they prepare their hearth. And every start of every hygge book out there seems to begin with light. The Danes are obsessed with light. They have designers that are famous for designing a light that distributes it, but you don't look directly at it. It's so pleasant. They love lamps and they love candles and fireplaces. Danish homes have 30% of them have fireplaces, and in our country, 3% of homes have fireplaces. They buy the most candles of any country in Europe, and they are pro-candle and not scented candle. That is apparently a no. Just real traditional candles. It is about how do we prepare for this intentional season, not wishing it were something else, but honoring it for what it is and what it can be and how we can be well. And so lighting matters. They talk about these nooks by windows with a cozy blanket and cozy socks and your favorite tea and a lamp and the natural light from the outside world. They soak in that natural light that is necessary and essential to all of us and to creation. And they appreciate the hours that they can receive it. There's so much care for natural light and for lighting that in some of their neighbors, like Germany, there's actually regulations that your office cannot be absent of natural light for more than like 4 hours. You cannot make someone work in a basement, which they must not have ever been to my social studies classrooms in high school because every single one of them was an interior classroom with all fluorescent lights, which is clearly an abomination. They take light seriously because they know in these seasons where it is sparse, it matters. And they talk about this space of making your home like the golden hour. The golden hour is roughly the first hour after sunset and the last hour before sunset, where the sun is low in the sky and the sunlight has to travel through a greater depth of atmosphere. During these times, it produces warm, soft, diffused light. It's sometimes called the magic hour, and I think I have fallen in love with every woman whose picture I have taken at this time of day. This is the light you want to aim for when you are hygge lighting. You're indoors. The flattering quality of this light will make you and your friends look fabulous. It's better than any Instagram filter because it's real, because it's present, because it's all the time. Now, before IKEA would have made it so easy for these Scandinavian neighbors to get all the candles and the pleasant lamps that diffuse the light just right. Before that, preparing for winter had these sacred qualities. these sacred ways of being. And there's often a candle mass in winter in different countries. In Ireland, the candle mass centers around St. Bridget. Bridget was this pre-Christian goddess known for fire and fertility and springing into life. This pre-Christian goddess who invited this work of possibility. She's known as a saint for her abbey, for the way her abbey invited hospitality in the Christian tradition. And when she did the work of hospitality, like making bread and making butter and making beer, all of this work of hospitality. There's seats right over here. As she did this work of hospitality, she invited warmth and she invited storytelling and she invited sharing. And she shared the stories of her faith, and not just by preaching them or teaching them, but by imagining them. And she put herself in the stories of faith. She put herself in the stories. She imagined herself at the birth of Jesus, the midwife. She imagined herself bringing food to Mary and Joseph as they journey to Bethlehem for that census. She puts herself in the middle of the moment where those wise ones have shown up at the house and Herod is on the hunt for a baby. And in this moment, as she's weaving and teaching, she invites them to imagine that she placed a wreath of candles on her head and danced away and distracted the soldiers so that the child could escape harm. She placed herself in the stories and brought light into darkness and imagined how the people around her might do the same. So every February in Ireland, Bridget's Mass is celebrated, and all the people bring the candles that will be used for the next year, and they are blessed together. Further to the north in Sweden, the candle mass is celebrated around St. Lucy. Even though she's not Swedish, she's probably from Sicily. And her story doesn't happen in Sweden, it happens in Rome, in the catacombs during what is called the Great Persecution, this time of struggle and triumph over Christianity. They're not even named Christians yet. These folks who are following Jesus, this strange offshoot of Judaism, this group that will not conform, that constantly asks to change the status quo, they are hiding in the catacombs. They are surrounded by the grave and the death and the bones, and they are hoping to survive. It is into this space that St. Lucy places a wreath of candles on her head and fills her hands with food, and she enters this catacomb and feeds and nourishes the community. That's the story of St. Lucy, and every December, the Swedish church will celebrate this moment of blessing. A young woman will dress in white with a vibrant red sash of a martyr and a candle wreath on her head and process into the sanctuary. People naming this work of bringing light and bringing possibilities and remembering those who so long before them did the same. These candle masses come out of this nourishment and this longing in the midst of darkness for light. Our stories in Scripture often name dark and light and point towards it as a gift. And it's not because darkness is bad. There is this history in Christianity to make darkness bad. This is a metaphor about light and dark. It is not a metaphor about black and white. It is not a metaphor about skin tones and toxic Christianity. It is an invitation to explore the fullness of who we are and how we are in community. Isaiah speaks about dark and light over and over and over and over, and talks about this vibrant light that is clarifying. All the nations will come to it, to be a part of it, because it is filled with justice and equity. Jesus will talk about light as the way that we might light our candles, light these spaces, and bring something clarifying and new. It is not about darkness being bad. It is not about darkness being scary. Nobody's talking about light because Isaiah needed a nightlight and really hated the dark. It is about this intention of how we take care. And when they speak about this space of darkness, the ways that we internalize shame and struggle and brokenness, the ways that we create shame and struggle and brokenness, and the ways we see it exist and let it go on and on and on without speaking up or bringing light to make change. That's the light in the darkness. That's the star on the horizon. That's the candle wreath entering the catacomb. As we think about this season, when the night cloaks the day, we are invited to be clear, to open our eyes to the horizon and to the stars and to see something, to explore carefully who we are and how we are in the world and how each of us bring our piece of light and hope into a world of despair. May we have the courage to don our candles, to fill our hands with food for the spaces that need it, to don our candles and to dance the forces of violence away from the vulnerable. May we have the courage to bring our light in wherever it is called, to nourish it in ourselves, in our homes, in our community, that we might offer it to others. May it be so. Amen.